You ever get your life destroyed by a single sentence? Just 6 words, spoken by a scared 5-year-old, and suddenly cops are at your door, your wife's in handcuffs, your son's taken away, and your world is falling apart. I wish I was being dramatic. I wish this was just a cautionary tale or something I heard from a friend. But no, this happened to me, and I'm still living in the wreckage of what that moment left behind. Let me tell you the story. This was a couple of decades ago. I was in my mid-20s, and by most people's standards, I probably looked like I had no business raising 2 kids on my own. But that's exactly what I was doing. My first marriage didn't last long. One of those early impulsive young love situations. We were both barely out of high school when we got married, and within a few years, we had 2 sons and a divorce. The split was surprisingly civil, all things considered. No screaming matches, no custody battles, just a quiet acknowledgement that we weren't meant to be partners forever. The court gave me full custody. I had a stable job, a decent place to live, and most importantly, I wanted to be there for my boys every single day. Our youngest, Caleb, looked just like me. Brown eyes, brown hair, solid build, even as a toddler. You could tell early on he was going to be one of those kids who could plow through a wall if he had to. My older son, Jason, was the opposite. He looked exactly like his mother. Pale blonde hair, light blue eyes, skin so thin and fair it bruised if you breathed on it too hard. 2 very different-looking boys, both full of energy, noise, and mischief. Back then, I was living with my best friend, Mike. We split rent, tag-teamed parenting, and built something like a second version of a family between the 4 of us. I worked mornings, he worked nights. We had a rhythm. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. And then I met Lisa. She was smart, calm, funny in a dry sort of way. There was something grounding about her. She didn't flinch at the idea of dating a guy with 2 young kids. She didn't run when she saw the mountain of Legos underfoot or the never-ending chorus of "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy" echoing from room to room. She leaned in. She got involved. After a while, the boys called her by name, asked for her when she wasn't around. It felt right. Eventually, we got married. Simple ceremony. Backyard, friends, nothing fancy. Just a promise. We're in this together now. Lisa wasn't their biological mom, but she treated them like her own. She took Jason to school, packed his lunches, read bedtime stories. When Caleb had nightmares, she was right there with me, rubbing his back until he fell asleep. I thought we had it figured out. Our own patchwork family that, while not perfect, worked. Discipline in our house was never physical. That was a hard line for me. No spanking, no yelling, just timeouts, long talks, and consequences that made sense. We talked through everything. Why hitting your brother wasn't okay. Why you can't throw your peas at the wall. I wanted them to understand right from wrong, not fear me. So when I tell you that what happened next came out of nowhere, I mean it. It was a Saturday afternoon when it all started. The boys were in the living room, arguing over some beat-up little toy truck. Not a new one, not a birthday gift. Just one of those generic plastic things that had somehow become the holy grail that day. Caleb had it. Jason wanted it. I was in the kitchen doing dishes when I heard the shouting. "Give it back!" "No, I had it first." And then, bang! A thud, a wail, a door slamming open. Jason was screaming. Caleb was screaming. I ran in to find Jason holding his face, Caleb in full-blown panic mode. Apparently, in the heat of their tug-of-war over the toy, Caleb had yanked it back with just enough force that his elbow flew up and clocked Jason right in the eye. It looked bad. And I mean bad. Jason's eye was already swelling. Deep purple started blooming beneath the skin like a bruise being painted in real time. On his pale face, it looked 10 times worse than it probably was. They were both sobbing. I separated them, calmed them down, and sat Jason on the couch with an ice pack. He sniffled. Caleb apologized. We had another one of those long talks about sharing, about accidents, about how sometimes things happen, but it doesn't make anyone a bad person. By bedtime, they were playing again like nothing had happened. Laughing, wrestling. Jason barely noticed the bruise, but I did. The next morning, Jason left for kindergarten with a superhero backpack, a smile on his face, and one hell of a black eye. That's where the story should have ended. But 3 hours later, just before noon, there was a knock at the front door. I opened it to find two sheriff's deputies and a woman with a clipboard and a state ID badge that read, Child Protective Services. At first, I thought they had the wrong house. Then, one of the deputies asked, Is Lisa here? My wife appeared in the hallway behind me, confused. The next minute was a blur. Cuffs clicking, questions firing, Lisa crying, Caleb scared out of his mind, clutching my leg, while strangers took his mother away. The CPS worker leaned down to Caleb and said, It's okay, honey. You're coming with me for a little while. I stood frozen, stunned. What the hell is happening? You'll need to come down to our office this afternoon, she said, not even looking at me. We need to speak with your son. She didn't even let me say goodbye. And then they were gone. My hands were shaking as I tried to call Lisa's parents. I couldn't reach her at the jail. I didn't know where they had taken Caleb. My house was dead quiet, except for the ringing in my ears and the sound of the ice machine clicking behind me. 3 hours later, I was in a fluorescent-lit room across from a social worker, trying to piece together what in God's name had just happened. They played me a recorded statement from Jason's kindergarten teacher. Apparently, she saw the black eye and didn't ask the usual, what happened, or are you okay? Number. She asked, verbatim, did your mommy hit you? Jason, 5 years old, scared of getting in trouble again over the toy fight, said yes. He thought he was in trouble, that he was getting Lisa in trouble. He just said what he thought would explain it all quickly. That one word, yes, set off a chain reaction that tore our world apart. I explained everything. I told them about the toy, the fight, the elbow. I told them Jason had no history of bruises, no signs of abuse, no behavior changes. I told them Lisa would never lay a hand on either of them. The social worker nodded politely, then leaned in and said, Kids don't lie about these things. That sentence, kids don't lie about these things, was repeated to me like gospel. No matter how many times Jason told the truth later, no matter how much evidence we showed, that sentence held more power than anything I could say. They let me take Jason home. CPS kept Caleb overnight for observation. Lisa spent the night in jail. Over the next week, everything unraveled. Lisa was released on bail, but the judge ordered that she have no contact with either of the boys, pending investigation. So she stayed in a hotel, burned through our savings. Her parents eventually offered her a plane ticket to stay with them across the country. She took it. She quit her job, packed a single suitcase, and boarded a flight with no return date. My best friend Mike had moved out by then. I was alone with the kids. My job didn't pay enough to afford daycare without Lisa's income. I was desperate, struggling, exhausted. And so, I made the hardest decision I've ever made in my life. I called my ex-in-laws, Jason and Caleb's maternal grandparents. I had always kept in touch with them. They were good people and they loved the boys. I asked if they could take the kids for a while, just until I figured things out. They agreed. I packed up their clothes, their favorite toys, wrote notes for each of them, and I put them on a plane. I walked back into that empty house, collapsed on the couch, and cried for the first time in years. Lisa fought the charges, took the case to trial. After months of waiting, legal bills, and uncertainty, she was found not guilty. The court finally acknowledged what I had said from the beginning. It was an accident, a misunderstanding. But the damage was already done. Our marriage never recovered. We tried. God, we tried. We talked, cried, went to therapy. But something inside us had broken. The trust, the stability, that deep foundation you need to weather the storms of life. It had cracked. We separated 2 years later. Quietly. No fights. Just silence. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry. I'm not. Not in the way you'd think. I don't blame the teacher. She was doing what she was trained to do. But I do think she should have asked a better question. I don't even blame CPS. Not entirely. They're stretched thin. dealing with real monsters out there. But I do blame the arrogance, the assumption that kids can't lie or don't get confused. That's not how children work. They make mistakes. They say what they think adults want to hear. What I feel is grief. Grief for the life we were building. Grief for the nights my wife cried in a hotel bed, labeled a criminal for something she didn't do. Grief for the boys, who had to be told why their family was falling apart. All because of 6 little words. Did your mommy hit you? If you take anything away from this story, let it be this. Ask better questions. Don't jump to conclusions. And always, always, look a little deeper than the surface. Because one innocent mistake, one tiny misunderstanding, can cost you everything. And by the time you realize what really happened, it might be too late to fix it.